So this is my version of that Mcgrath palette, and I am quite happy with it. Today we are gonna try to dupe this palette, the Mcgrath Mothership Mega this year. It's their holiday launch. This is what they have for last year holiday. So actually I liked this color story a lot, but I am just not pleased with the formula. This year the color story is still looking very nice. I am just concerned of the formula because the shimmers, metallics and the glitters in this palette is kind of dry, even though it's much cheaper compared to their other permanent Mothership palette. It's still, for me, it does not worth the price tag, which is like $78. I think for the same price you can, or even cheaper, the Natasha Denona palettes are a better choice. But the color story is always so on point for Mcgrath eyeshadow palette, so I just want to dupe it with what I actually have. And actually, if you really look at this palette, so this is screenshot I got from Instagram, and from this photo I want to say it's actually just a warm neutral palette with a light green shimmer, aqua blue kind of shimmer, and one dark grayish bluish kind of shimmer shade. The rest colors are very easy to find colors actually, like some bronze shade and some champagne shimmer, or some matte peachy shades. They are very easy to find. So here is some of my single eyeshadows, Natasha Denona palettes. I am gonna try to dupe this 18 shade Mothership Mega palette this year. So the first one is a matte purple. Even though I don't think this is an exact dupe for that matte purple shade, but I like this kind of shade a little bit more. This is the shade Soul in the Love palette from Natasha Denona. So the shade next to that is a light peachy shimmer kind of thing. Actually, I think this Makeup Geek eyeshadow might be a version that I would like for that eyeshadow. I think this is a little bit lighter, but I like this kind of lighter peachy shimmery metallic shade better, and I haven't used this shade for a long time. So that's the next shade. The shade next to that is yellowy gold shimmer, and that's actually quite easy to dupe. I am gonna go with this shade from the Natasha Denona Gold palette. I think this is a little bit darker than that golden shade, but I don't think on the eye it would be that different. So the shade next to that looks like a gray or a black with a silver I don't know, a silver glitter on top. Surprisingly, I don't have anything like that, but also it's a shade that I don't think I would use. Like, I never use a very glittery black gray kind of color, so I think I'm gonna go with a version of color that is similar to that but is actually a color that I would use, which is this color from the Natasha Denona brown green palette, the big one. This is a very dark cool toned taupe glitter shade, and it's absolutely beautiful. I don't know if you can tell. I think this is a much lighter and wearable version of that color. next to that shade is like a bronze color. It's like a warm, rosy kind of bronze, metallic. I'm not sure if it's metallic or glittery kind of color. The color Silk from the Natasha Bronze palette would be something that's very similar. The next shade is just a dark brown, like a warmer dark brown. So, and that kind of shade is very easy to find in a lot of palettes. And I'm just gonna go with the color in this same bronze palette. This is the shade Magma. So onto the next row. The first color would be a pale, almost silvery shimmer or metallic kind of shade. Maybe this shadow, this one, would be something that's similar, I think. And I think I would actually use this color, so yeah, I'm just gonna go with it. The next is just a burnt orange matte color. Go with this Sunrise palette from Natasha Denona. This one, the Jasper color. It's pretty close. The next shade is I don't know, a pinky metallic kind of shade, I think. I don't know if this shade is close or not, but I do want to get some use of this shade from the LILA palette. I believe this palette is discontinued. The shade next to this is actually a shade that's kind of difficult to dupe. It's a very pale periwinkle kind of shimmer. This one from the Love palette is the shade Blind. I think this shade is a little bit more silver than that shade and less of a periwinkle, but it's a good enough dupe for me. Next, I'm just gonna go with this one, the Intense shade from also the Love palette, and the shade next to that is a peachy pinky shimmer shade. This Azalea shade from the Sunrise palette would be a good dupe. I think it's a little bit darker, but yeah, I think it's close enough to say it's a dupe. The second row has done. The first color on the third row is a bronze shimmer, and that kind of shade you can actually find on like most of the palettes. I think I want to go with this color from the Gold palette, mid-toned, kind of neutral shimmer shade. I think it's quite a good dupe for that palette, and this color would be very pretty to use all over the eyelid as a like a one and done kind of color. Writing every name on the back of the shadow so that when I want to break this custom palette apart, I know where the color is. So this stands for Natasha Denona Gold, and it's the fifth color on the second row, and that makes sense for me. The shade next to this, it's kind of like a pale gold shade that shifts to a little bit peach, or maybe the base shade is leaning a little bit peachy. It's a color that's kind of hard to find an exact dupe. I'm just gonna go with something that I would love to use. This shade from the Sunrise palette, this All Real, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, this All Real color is actually something that could be similar. I don't know if you can tell. it's all so dirty. The back of the pen, like every little shade from the Natasha Denona, like this kind of size palette, the pen is always so dirty. The shade name down. So the shade next to this is actually, I think, a shade that people will buy this palette for. This color from the gold palette would be quite a close dupe for that shade, and this is a very, very pretty shade, and I would love to get a little more use out of this. And there's only 3 shades left. So the next one is a very, very rich burnt orange kind of shade, and that shade looks very pretty. This from the bronze palette would be quite close. Yeah, I would say it's quite close, maybe not as rich and as orange. This shade may be better. It's from the sunset palette, or maybe even the mix of these 2 shades. But I actually like this shade better, even though I think this is more leaning on the gold side and less of a hot orange. But I think this shadow is so pretty. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go with this one. So the next looks like a pale taupe color. This one, it's a glitter, like a pure glitter shade, with just a hint of green, and it is absolutely beautiful. So that's the shade I'm gonna go with. The last shade, I think that's the hardest shade to dupe, well, for me, from that palette, because I don't think I have anything quite like that. Actually, this color would be something similar, but this is more of a duochrome, and that Natasha Denona palette is just a pure green. I mixed 2 colors together to create this shade. This is quite a good dupe for that color. So we already had this shade. It's from the Natasha Denona gold palette, and I mixed this color with this darker green color. It just creates something that's quite similar. And this would be the last shade into this palette. So this is my version of that Mcgrath palette, and I am quite happy with it. Don't know if it's similar enough for you, but it's similar enough for me to not purchase that palette. I mostly used shade from Natasha Denona palettes, like the gold palette, the bronze palette, and this bronze green palette. And think if you have that 3, you can dupe most of the shades in this palette and you don't have to buy it. So yeah, that's my result. And now I look at it, it doesn't look like very holiday for me. It looks quite spring, like spring kind of shade for me. Maybe because of these light greens in this. So yeah, thank you for watching.